So this is a conversation that was actually born a little while back ago. Uh, but more recent stuff actually made me start thinking about it a little more. Um, that was a little bad, but if you can read the title of the video, it is tone versus intent. The whole point of this video is I want to like start a conversation with between the genders or the sexes, between men and women, because it's a type of communication problem I've noticed between men and women, but the solution is something that just kind of requires men and women, you know what I mean, which is a lot of the solutions I pose are oftentimes a lot on the hands of young ladies being more humble and accepting more responsibility, but we'll talk about that some other time. This one conversation in particular, though, I do feel kind of like rest on humans in general, and I say men and women. I mean, I'm going to be talking generally, of course, but it can really be anybody, and I think anyone can really get something out of this video. At least that's my intentions. So, tone versus intent. So basically, how this was the best way to kind of start this conversation is kind of talk about the issues I've been having, and I've noticed other people have been having when like trying to talk to women or when women try to talk to men, and that is the communication that a lot of men and women have is kind of off. But we have this expectation that it's the same when it really isn't, or that we should recognize that it's the same when like the way we're socialized and the way we think in general of the world is just different. The way a lot of men communicate, this is me in particular, are very direct communicators. We say what we mean and we mean what we say. Like we just say it straight up. And our tone of voice, or like the way we say it, maybe our diction or the inflection of our voice. Of course, the English language obviously changes the meaning based on what you're inflecting on, what you're putting stress on, what you're trying to put focus on in a sentence, obviously. But it's not the whole message. Of course, everyone always says, communication is what 35% what you say and like 65% your body language and your tone. And I honestly feel like that's an incredibly feminine way of accepting communication. And you'll see the error in that as the video goes on. But I don't think that that's the way most people honestly recognize things. At least I don't think that's the way a lot of men recognize things. Not just, from having lots of different conversations with men in general, but also having lots of different conversations with women. With women, it does seem particularly that most of the understanding of their communication of what's being said is indeed in their tone and body language and not what is directly stated. Whereas the complete opposite seems to be the case for a lot of men, where it's usually what you've stated directly is what is communicated upon. A lot of women you see like a lot of different memes and whatnot of like women. There's actually a funny meme I saw, I'm pretty sure I can find it. You know what I mean? On iFunny, I'll post up somewhere. That kind of really shows this to be the case, where like men are recognizing a more direct communicate or are directing more straightforwardly versus than like what women are doing usually. And so my whole point in saying all of this is that it just causes a lot of different problems and miscommunication issues, and I can lace this down with lots of different examples. For example, there's this one girl I knew back in high school that I had a crush on, and I used to like flirt around with, play around with, um and like innocently. It's nothing, nothing like that. But there's one point where she would always do something to me, whether like she like pinch my side or like she would say something, like she would do something to me, and I would always say woman, and eventually she said, like, why do you always have to call me a woman like that? And I'm like, because you're a woman. What do you mean? She's like, well, yeah, like you're saying woman, but like it sounds like you're trying to say bitch. And so then I was like, well, do you want me to call you a bitch? Like I'm specifically calling you a woman. Now, here's the thing, and this is where our communications were all kind of mixed up. My tone of voice, oftentimes when I said woman in that particular way, I was trying to communicate like stop, like stop doing what you're doing, chill out. What she interpreted was like bitch, like she took like a very negative connotation out of that, right? And here's what the issue is that I'm oftentimes finding when you when, as like from the feminine side, when they're looking at conversations in that particular way, the subject is based on their interpretation, or like whatever, like how they feel is based on what they decide to pull out of it. And instead of clarifying it, that's the interpretation they take and kind of run with, that I'm beginning to notice. For example, I can give you guys a really good example. Actually, it's happened personally. So a little while back ago, it was like a couple of years ago, actually, I made a video, a response to a guy named Justin Dennis, or is it Riley Dennis? I really don't. It's neither here nor there. Um, about fat acceptance, and I made this video with the strongest and most positive of intentions, though my tone was very frustrated with Justin. I'll explain everything, right? And my ultimate point in the video response to Justin was that being fat is one of the best things you could possibly like. I actually think that's the title of the video, and my point, which I directly communicated very clearly, was that at the end of the day, being fat is one of the best possible things you could ever have as an ailment, because you can always change it. You can always be better. You can always do something. And even if you never lose lots of weight, you can always increase your cardiovascular strength and at least have some semblance of health. It might not be the best, but you can try. You can do something about it, versus anything else. Usually, you just kind of leave up to your body's immune system, and you just that, you know. But what happened was my mom saw the video, and I guess from her point of view, she says she actually said that I said that I thought that fat people were disgusting, which is it's never an opinion I ever had. But then like my younger sister overheard it, and she thought that I had this opinion for a while, right? And so I ended up showing my mom the video, and my older sister the video, and to prove to them definitively, I never said this, and I told them directly, I've never even had this opinion, I've never even felt this way, and it was really funny because at the end of it all, after I played the video out and I showed them I never said it, my mom's response after that was, you know what, I was wrong. I'm sorry about. No, her response to that was actually, well, maybe you said it somewhere else. So, which it was like, wow. I was like, wow, woman, like wow, okay. It's like if I can prove you wrong directly. I showed you that you're wrong with the video. I literally tell you, hey, I've never felt this way before. I've never even had this opinion. What can you really do after that point? And that's really my point, honestly, is the fact that if you later, actually, I'm not even done yet. Later, I had another conversation with my older sister, and again, rather than saying I was incorrect, she then says, she still turns it on me and says, even with that one video you made, your tone of voice made it seem like you were disgusted, by fat people, right? And so this here is just kind of honestly just a fabrication, right? Like of her own mind, because I've just never felt that way. If my tone was, if anything, I can tell you directly, and this is my point, I can say directly that my frustrations with Justin's video, or Riley, whatever, with that person's video, was the fact that I thought that they were leading people to their ruin. Like I thought that this was going to do more harm than it would ever do anyone good, the whole fat acceptance thing. And ironically, a huge portion of the passion that came behind that was for the sake of my mom and my younger sister. So here's the thing. Here's what's so crazy about this, right? And this is what I think is a very strong point in the video. My intentions and even my motivations always came from a really, really good place. It actually came out of love. And yet their interpretation of that was incredibly negative based on my tone of voice, which was actually directed at something entirely different. But because of how they perceived, I guess, me personally, or how they perceived anyone's negativity, they directed what my tone of voice should have been on Justin's nonsensical thoughts onto the topic of fat people, which honestly just couldn't even be further from the truth. I don't harbor any disdain for anyone for being fat. Like it really ain't got nothing to do with me. But I do think that it's unhealthy and it's not a good idea to go around saying that we should just have fat acceptance, which is even more ironic because we don't have ugly acceptance. You know what I mean? People regularly go under the knife to change the way their facial body looks, and breast implants and all of that. So but that's my opinion on fat acceptance. I'll leave that where it is. My ultimate point in this video, though, is the fact that because of the way a lot of women are interpreting tone of voice, without having that direct communication, or without having, honestly, like, I would say, the humility or the wisdom to recognize where people are coming from when they're saying things. They honestly can just subscribe the absolute incorrect message. And then they can take that and run with it. And then everyone is upset with each other over something that was communicated directly, or maybe it was communicated indirectly. Because here's the thing, and I think the reason why a lot of women operate like this is because they don't recognize how different men are from them, you know? Um, for example, let's take this. You know, the way a lot of young men communicate with each other, like I said, it's just very straightforward. It's just very direct. I feel this way, you know what I mean? Or the way we joke with each other. We're oftentimes spend a lot of time. You find lots of memes like this. You know, a lot of men spend a lot of their time making fun of each other and never meaning it. But women spend a lot of their time complimenting each other and never meaning it. You know, and so I think this is where tone versus intent becomes very important. Because if you listen to the intent of how boys like make fun of each other, I actually saw this the other day. I mean, I experienced this. It's not even just seeing it like other boys do it. I've lived it. I've done this before. Making fun of each other, you know, is a way that we show the fact that we're comfortable with each other. We're comfortable with our flaws, and it might even sometimes be a way to get other people to recognize that flaw and maybe change it or do something different. Sometimes that can be the case. Other times it's just us trying to be creative. Sometimes it's us just trying to be funny. It's just us trying to have a good time with each other, you know? And so to the outside person, like insulting your friend quite a bit or saying mean things to them a lot, you know, might look like you guys don't like each other, but it's the complete opposite. You know, you guys actually really care about each other a lot. You guys have just become comfortable enough to say these mean things and recognize what's more important is the fact that we're friends rather than, you know, this nasty thing that you said to me, even though it's a joke. You don't even mean it in the first place. Whereas women, on the other hand, oftentimes communicate with each other with a lot of, I would say, what's the word I'm looking for? With a lot of, false kindness was the best word I can use. There's another word I was thinking of, but that's the best word I can use. You know, or false pleasantries. That's the best word to use. Where they'll be pretty nice and pleasant in front of other people, but in the back of their mind, they harbor all of these different nasty thoughts. I remember one time I even saw it. The shit is fucking. It's eerie. It's eerie. I remember one time there's this one girl. She was talking some grade A. I'm talking about, you know, nice large grade A bullshit about another girl, right? And that girl comes into the cafeteria, right? And so then they sit down and they have a nice conversation with each other. Everything's fine. They're all laughing, joking, having a great time. The first girl leaves. That girl starts talking grade A. I'm talking about grade A bullshit about the other girl that just left, right? So you have how some girls communicate with each other. This false pleasantry is the fact that their tone of voice will be nice and kind, but their intentions, especially like they compliment each other or be in the presence of each other, it can be totally different. Sometimes it's just about them gaining information or gaining false trust amongst each other. So at some point in time, they can manipulate them to get something else that they want, or like have an information network where they catch rumors and whatnot and find ways to move up a social ladder. You know, you've got some women who will do that. The whole point in talking about this when it comes to tone versus intent is the fact that if you look at the tone of how boys talk to each other, you're going to get a wrong set of communication. And if you look at the way the girls communicate with each other with their tone, you're going to get the wrong information. What's important is not just your tone, but it is also your intent. It is also what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. And that's kind of ultimately the lesson that I want people to like recognize and like kind of understand when it comes to, you know, this conversation between men and women, because a lot of the time, like a lot of my, like, you know, people have this phrase, you know, the road to hell is often paved. The road to hell is often paved with good intentions, and it was never something that I ever really totally co-signed with. I get the point. You know, people are oftentimes saying negative intentions or negative results or bad things, you know, are oftentimes not done out of evil or not done out of spite. They're often done with the best, but they end up hurting people, and I really do get that. But excuse me, I feel like part of that is on the responsibility of the other person who is upset with the action. No, I mean, I don't really have a lot of really good examples of really showing you like how the best intentions really have like these awful grand, you know, destructive results to people. Some people probably can come up with some examples. But I mean, honestly, half the time, when that phrase is used, the intent is more about people's like feelings being hurt. When I oftentimes see it, it's more people's feelings are being hurt. So that's kind of what I'm going to frame the conversation around in this video. I'm sure other people can have some other examples in the comment section, but in this video in particular, we're going to talk about how we can say and do things that end up hurting people, but people would rather choose to be angry and hurt about it rather than like reading the intent and seeing it better. I'd give you guys a good example, which kind of helped me out when I was younger. My mom used to call me like sorry a lot of the time, and I was a really sensitive kid back in the day. But even now, I was a really sensitive person, and it just kind of was really angry and frustrating to me that no matter what I did, the result was always it was just going to be sorry and bad and stupid. So eventually, it just bogged down on me. Of course, I understand now what her intentions were. Her intentions was to get me to improve and do a better job. But what she said, was totally just didn't match that to me at all. But now being older and like recognizing where she came from, I don't feel bad about it, anymore. It kind of is what it is. And I think that that's what a lot of people kind of miss is the fact that some people can say or do mean things to you, or someone can say or do something that hurts you, right? And if you look at what was said, if you looked at the way they said it or how they said it, you kind of miss like where they're coming from. I wouldn't even say most of the time, but some of the time actually can come from a really good place. But here's the thing, and this is why there kind of has to be a good like ebb and flow about it, like it does take a bit of taking a step back and like really thinking about it and like analyzing it and letting it sit, and boil, right? Because I remember there was a time where someone said something with the complete opposite intentions that was actually really helpful. And this is actually a really good time where again intentions and tone, they don't meet each other, or maybe they do meet each other, but something good actually can come out of it, if you're willing to accept it. There's a huge argument I had with this one kid. He's probably one of my greatest foes. And he said, you're like an uptight, uprighteous douchebag, you know what I mean, who thinks that you're always being wronged by the world, when really you're causing problems for yourself. And of course, his intentions were not in the slightest to help me out at all. He was not trying to do me a solid. He was trying to hurt me. But it was actually a really good thing that he said that, because then I stopped and I had to recognize, maybe there's some truth in it. Is what he's saying right? I don't know. I had to think about it. Maybe there is some truth into that. And so even though his intent was purely evil, like purely destructive, the result is a little different. So of course, they say the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. Well, I mean, what is the highway to heaven paved with disgusting thoughts? I don't know. I don't think there's really an opposite to that. But well, I mean, there is. I just gave you an example of the opposite, but an opposite to the idiom. I mean, but my whole point in that is to say this, that even though someone's intentions can be incredibly negative, sometimes really good things can come out of it. And in the same way that someone's intentions can be really good, sometimes negative things can come out of it. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the communication between men and women, we have to be humble and dare I say wise enough to recognize like where are those intentions coming from and what are they trying to do, and how do we let that like hurt us. I can give you like another really good example, and this actually I think is a really good one. And it was another video I made a little while back ago, where I used my sister's friend as a good example of these thoughts I had been having, right? And my intentions were like never to hurt them or never to harm them in any particular way, but I did, and I recognize I could have made that video a lot better, and I could have done a lot more with that video. I could have protected their identity a lot better, even though I never said their name. I used too many specific details, so anyone that knew. But my mindset was that people who didn't know, like it wouldn't matter, But and I recognized that 100%, But my intentions were I mean really good. My whole point in the video was to say that you have to recognize what the motivation of your relationship is, and if you never recognize what the motivation of what motivates the relationship is, you guys can end up being bound together with each other for a long time with someone that you don't even like, and that was my ultimate point. But the example that I used, I could have done a lot differently, 100%. And I think that my mom and my sister were right to criticize me there. But at the same time, Even though I do feel the criticism was right, I do think that being upset to the degree that they were at kind of misses or kind of paints me in a light that isn't really fair. And that is to say that, you're upset with me as if I've done something like cruel or evil. And my mom actually at one point said that, I talked to her about it, and she said, I don't know if this is like a persona of yours that you have, or if you're actually like this person that will like take personal business and air it out on the internet. But that's not good to be. And it was interesting to me that that was like what she would say to me, mostly because of like literally all the videos I've ever made. Like the vast majority of the catalog is not me ever trying to hurt anyone, but always the complete opposite. But me trying to figure out some solution to a problem, or me trying to empathize with people, or me trying to work through a solution, or like recognize a problem and say, hey, this is wrong, we should do something differently about this. And so with a video catalog like that, you know what I mean, it's just find it particularly strange that she would think that she would get the worst, perception of me there. And that's kind of my point, is the fact that my intentions were really good, and the road to hell was paved with them, and I ended up hurting their feelings, and that's 100% true and accurate. I am sorry about that. But at the same time, it's like I actually honestly think that like more good will 100% be done if they accept that. Because now, if they hear what I said and recognize what I said, then it's like, okay, well, now moving forward, I can recognize what my motivations are in my relationships, and now I can do something differently rather than be caught in the same cycle over and over and over again. So the good thing is, so there's a lot of good to be held in that. Even though something bad came out of it, or even though the feelings were hurt, there's a lot of good information, and I think there's a lot more good to be taken from that than there is bad. And even though I recognize, the feelings were hurt, I still think that there's more to it than just that. And that is kind of the ultimate video that I'm trying to make here today. Well, there's lots of different things I'm trying to say here today. So I just kind of to summarize and bring this video to its ultimate conclusion. Number one, if a lot of miscommunication can be brought between men and women, or anyone really, if you're only recognizing the tone of what people are saying, rather than recognizing what people are saying directly and trying to fuse them together. Again, people say that most of the communication we're done is, 65% tone and body language and 35% directly stated. And I feel like that's pretty feminine. I don't really think that that's the way. I don't think a lot of people communicate like that, honestly. And not even just so much autistic people, but just people in general. I do not think that, that's a normal way men in particular communicate, just based on my own experiences with them. But I do think that that's the way a lot of women communicate based on my experiences with them. And so I think that there's kind of has to be like a merging of where people recognize how people communicate. Are they listening and recognizing their tone too much? Maybe I'm wrong in my interpretation of this person's tone, and maybe I have to listen to what they said directly, and I have to trust what they said directly. And if you don't trust the people, and if you don't trust what they say directly, then that issue of miscommunication is on your part. There has to be some kind of merging there where you recognize that there could be subtext there. Maybe the person might just be sad. You don't know, but you got to think about it, for a couple of seconds. If not for a couple of seconds, just like briefly, Number two, like our intentions, sometimes don't always match our actions. They don't match what we did. But a part of that kind of has to come again to in not just so much interpretation, but like recognizing what people are doing. And even if you recognize the intentions are bad, there's a lot of good that can be taken from it. In fact, there's a lot of good that can be taken from anything. I think what's important is recognizing where there is good in something, and taking that, and then choosing to leave the bad where it is, or moving forward from the bad. And that's kind of what I would like a lot of other people to start like doing, is recognizing that a lot of the bad things that people can say can be helpful sometimes, but it takes thought. You have to recognize it. You have to think about it, rather than choosing to be upset about it for long periods of time. And that's ultimately the lesson I want to take. I want a lot of people to take. Well, there's lots to be taken from this video, but that's definitely one of those things. So with that being said, I just want to make you guys got something out of today's video. And if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. I should go and click that comment in the comment box below. As always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.